Welcome to the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This podcast is dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like all the best bookshops, this podcast is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. So tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book at the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. I'm Stacey Horan, author, book lover, and host of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This is episode number 250. For more information about this or any of our episodes, go to my website, staceyhoran.com. If you enjoy the podcast, leave us a review, like us on social media, and share us with your friends, family, and fellow readers. In today's episode of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet, I'm chatting with author Lois Melbourne about her new sci-fi novel, Moral Code. Lois was inspired by the idea of an ethical artificial intelligence that could protect children. In Moral Code, her main character, Dr. Keira Stetson, creates such an AI. Dr. Stetson begins by using it as her assistant, which she names Elly, and eventually uses it to help the FBI and other agencies identify dangers to kids. As the AI learns and grows, Elly becomes more vigilante than humble assistant. Lois admits that it took work to strike the right balance between technology and creativity when writing this novel. But at its heart, Moral Code is not really about tech. It's a story about people. In this episode, I'll chat with Lois about her writing journey, how she likes to avoid drama in her life, but can't avoid it in her writing, and how she's donating proceeds of this book to a tech company working to identify and thwart child trafficking, as well as a few other things. Coming up. Lois Melbourne, I want to thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast.
I am very appreciative of being here.
I thought what we could do today is start by talking about your new book, Moral Code. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about this book, and in particular, what inspired you to write it?
Thank you. Moral Code is a science fiction, and it is focused on ethical artificial intelligence. So if I could build any AI, I would want an ethical AI that could protect kids. And that was part of the impetus for the story. And it is geared around a wonderful engineer that created an ethical AI and then started working with the FBI and other agencies and realized how endangered children were. And she and her AI, Elly, become a little bit vigilante-esque in their defense of kids to prevent trafficking and bullying and abuse.
Well, let's talk about your main characters. So you mentioned your main character, Dr. Keira Stetson.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about her, because I'm curious how you developed her, what inspirations you took in creating this character.
I think she's a combination of lots of people. I think that's one of the beauties of being an author, where you can kind of pick and choose elements to put into your characters. But I really felt that, one, I wanted to support women in STEM. So there's many female engineers in the book, but Keira she doesn't have any children herself, but she is very protective of them. And I really liked the ability to have smart women interacting and yet also bringing that element of who is probably the most likely to bring ethics into this industry. And might be a little feminist of me to say, but I think the broad scope of women's thinking maybe steers where technology might go.
Well, let's talk about her artificial intelligence creation. Can you introduce us to Elly?
Yes, Elly starts as Keira's assistant. Um, she's very capable. I wanted to share kind of the development of AI for people that aren't real comfortable with the concept. And so there's a lot of training because what you put into artificial intelligence greatly shapes what you receive back from an AI. And so I show the development. Elly grows through the storyline because she's training herself and she is being trained, and she's very intelligent and takes that direction. She has a wrapper around her, which I call the moral operating system, which creates those boundaries that only lets her make ethical decisions.
So, for people who might pick up this book, I imagine some of them will think, well, this is set way in the future. And there are probably others that pick it up and go, no, no, this is probably set today, like right now. What was your vision for the setting for this book?
That was a moving target because um, it was it was both fascinating. It's actually three things. It was fascinating, it was challenging, and it was validating that as I was writing the book and creating the vision for various technologies, um, I'd be doing research and there would come a newsletter from MIT that they had developed something that I was plotting to be out there in 15, 20 years. I'm like, okay, got to ring that back in. So originally I was targeting out about 20 years because I really felt like it would take a very long time for AI to be as generalized as I wanted it to be, which created its own challenge. What does a phone look like? What does do we use laptops? What are cars going to be doing then? And so the world building was taking up a lot of room of my story, I think, when I first started creating it. And then as technology became more and more here and now and capable, I reined it back in. So it's really near future. Elly's very advanced. The capability is not there right now for all of her skills. And however, it's all very realistic tech. It will be here at some point. That intelligence is growing at a very, very rapid rate. I wish that the ethical boundaries was growing at the same speed, although there is a lot of focus. There's a lot of focus on that. How do we make sure that there are boundaries? So it was a changing target, which did require edits.
Yeah. Well, I imagine you're sort of running a race to get the book done and out these days, right? Because technology moves so fast.
Yes.
Because by the time the public hears about it, I'm sure it's well on its way to being readily available technology. So how do how do you balance that? I mean, because I'm sure at some point you're thinking, well, I'm thinking of these like crazy scenarios. There's no way we can get there. And then, like you said, you get an email that says, okay, well, that crazy scenario, it's
It's
here.
here right now.
So I mean, you've mentioned some of the challenges in writing a book like this. Is it less desirable, or do you think it turns writers off to writing something like this? Because how do you keep up? Like, is the book out of date by the time it goes to print? I mean, I'm sure that's a concern in the back of, say, maybe your mind or other writers like this.
I think it is a challenge. It's a challenge that I don't think other genres probably face.
Right.
Although you can date a book very quickly by, having the greatest social media your teenager is using all of a sudden be defunct. So that could date your book.
Right.
Once again, though, that's tech, isn't it? So I think it does create a challenge, but I think it's also very rewarding to see I hit the mark on a lot of things. We talk about within the book, there are surveillance nanites, so another piece of tech within the book. And a version of those nanites is also doing rare earth metal recycling from the trash of all of our e-waste. And that is becoming a reality. There is a lot of nano level recycling starting right now, both for plastics and for electronics. And so, there's times when I'm like, oh, I got that for doing that. So there's fun in it as well. But I think it's also very important for an author sitting at that kind of intersection to make sure that you're not too reliant on the tech to make the story, that it's still about people and issues. And one of the things I like about science fiction is it does allow you to really address societal issues and people issues without being too preachy. You've got other mechanisms you can use to bring into play. And so it's important to make sure that you don't let the tech run away with it, because I wanted to make it a book that book clubs could read, and even a book club that's not into sci-fi. One of my book clubs, no, like I think one person in the whole book club had read much of any sci-fi. They didn't have to. And yet they were able to, really dive into what are the dilemmas in the story, what's going on in society and what does it take to address that, and not get too overwhelmed with the tech or the buzzwords. So that was my goal.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you strike that balance when you're writing between educating a reader who's not versed in what you're writing, but not making it so simplistic that somebody who has at least some idea of what you're talking about stays with it and doesn't put the book down, because it's a fine line, right? You're writing to people who have an interest in this, so they will probably pick up the book, but you're also writing to people who have heard about it but know nothing more than that.
Yes. That's a great question. And it's also the reason why my husband is my co-author on this. He did not write the any of the story, but he is a technical visionary and works with AI. And we had a software company. We worked together for 18 years. And Ross would teach me about the technology. And then I would go and learn more so that I could turn it into a story. And there was often a balance between, oh, but this is really cool tech. I really want to put this part in there and I really want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't support the story,
Mm.
or it's too big, or I can't get my head around that. We're a good partnership of being able to, discuss various things and dive into both the creativity side and the tech side. So there was a good balance there of a very technical mind that understood where things are going and helped direct me into that portion of the writing, but also myself having been in software sales and working with people, I'm good at translating tech into English. And so I think that helped enormously. Was we had two different roles and I wasn't all on my own from that perspective.
Yeah, that's good that you have had a built-in resource. Because
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of authors who decide to tackle this don't have someone readily available right at the breakfast table.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I'm curious what the reaction has been from readers. So, what sort of feedback? And in particular, have you ever gotten the question like, "Hey, is this true? Or is this really happening? Or do you know that this is out there and that's why you wrote it?"
I have had questions about how close are we to
Mm,
this. I have had people in the AI industry mostly be very supportive about the realism of where we're going with how decisions are made by AI and how it is a big challenge to make sure that if we're going to release into the world decision making to AIs, that we do it thoughtfully. I do get people that are challenged by how frequent or how close to our own neighborhoods, I guess,
mm.
abuse and trafficking can be. And so I have shared statistics. I think there's a lot of people that think that trafficking is a border issue, or it's other countries where this happens, and they don't realize that people are being trafficked that are right in our own neighborhoods. Nail salons are trained now to watch for signs of a trafficked young girl, and if you've got that happening, it's because it's far more ubiquitous than any of us want to realize. Which actually takes me to something that's important to me, which is all of the proceeds from Moral Code go to an organization called Thorn, that is a technology company that's helping identify and thwart trafficked individuals, and in particular focused on children, and being able to help those organizations that are trying to find lost kids, or they have found pornography or other things that involve children. How do we identify those kids and where they're at, et cetera? So that technology is really valuable to counteract the horrendous element of the trafficking. I was very, very careful to not create trigger events, hopefully, for anyone. There are scenes that make it known that someone is being trafficked, or that a group of people have been, held somewhere that they don't want to be, because they are going to be exported out of the country or moved to another place. But I was very careful to not make it a traumatic story.
Yeah. How do you find the balance in the book? And I'm keep asking these kinds of questions because to me, it's a book like this in science fiction has to strike balances of all different kinds all along the way. But in this scenario, how do you find the balance between showing the doom and gloom and danger with the hope and the possibility and the goals, the more optimistic goals of that same thing? Because I imagine you need both to create the tension, right?
Yes.
You can't just show one without showing the other, because that's maybe not a book. If it was all gloom and no hope, nobody's going to want to read that. If it's all hope with no gloom, that's probably not that interesting either. So Is it just a gut check, or is that input you get from others? How do you
It's
find that balance?
a great question. I knew from the beginning I could not write dystopian.
Mm,
I did not want to live in that mindset, but I did want reality. And so it did require a bit of angst at times in that process. I do not like um, in my own personal life. I try to avoid drama. It's like that's kind of life goal is to stay away from the over dramatic. And I found that when I first started writing, I was avoiding it in my writing too. And I got good feedback from early readers. And I was taking an online class and submitting chapters. And I had this one instructor say, "You really have to ramp up the drama. The conflict has to be there throughout the story." And it was fantastic feedback early in the writing, which did help me crank that up. But it is difficult to create that conflict that makes, like you say, that makes it interesting enough to have a pull so that you need you know the the Glinda and the Elspeth.
right,
you
right,
need the
right.
good witch and the bad witch in order for
Hmm.
there to be something there. And that was there was a line I had to look at was how far in to the drama can I get? So I think for my mindset, part of it was I see the book as a movie in my head.
Hmm.
And so I think part of it was trying to think about where do people draw the line in a movie or a TV drama that implies something has happened and it gives you the heebie-jeebies, but it does make you sick, you know.
Right, right.
So I think looking at other genres and action movies, et cetera, that have those lines constantly drawn for us was helpful.
Mm, yeah. Is this the kind of story you gravitate to when you're choosing something to read? Or, like you said, do you just stay away from, you go for lighter things?
I like in-depth things, so in that sense, yes, it's very much that. Um, I do, I I do like the challenges that are maybe a little darker, but that are overcome. So for me, I love I love books with strong women. I like books that are solving problems in unique ways where there's maybe an unpredictable approach to how something is solved. And I don't want to know how the story is going to end. I like the twists.
Right.
And so I think if I really boil it down, it's a matter of what's going to keep me reading so that I know that I'm going to learn something through the process, or I'm going to think, oh yeah, I want to cheer the uh, for the protagonist.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, were you always a writer? I mean, is this something you've always wanted to do, or is writing something you came to later in life?
Well, I've always loved to write. I studied marketing and advertising in school, but it was partly I wanted to work in the marketing on the business side. But my professional career was our software company. My husband and I started a software company when I was in my 20s, and we grew it to a global reach. And so at that point, I was writing, but I was writing blogs and business stuff.
Right.
Um, and then when I sold the company, I wrote two children's books because that was my project as soon as I sold the company. It was like, I need to get these books that have been in my heart and head for a long time out into the market. So they help kids explore careers. So I wrote those, and then I never thought that novel writing was going to be my path, but this was too tempting a topic. And so I learned along the way. It took a lot of rewrites. It took a lot of online classes. A lot of conferences to go and learn the craft. And so I have a sci-fi now with moral code, and now I'm working on historical fiction. So I'm not just focused on the text side. I'm more focused on the human side of what makes a great story.
Yeah, yeah. And I imagine, while historical fiction has its challenges, in that I imagine you're spending a lot of time researching. It's
Yes.
probably constant research. At least the technology is not getting away from you.
Yes, because the tech, the tech was, as I said, getting away from me sometimes. But it required a lot of research as well,
Yeah.
which actually kind of gave me the courage to go into the historical fiction because I realized that I really enjoyed the learning process of the research.
Yeah.
That was great fun.
So going forward, do you think it will be striking upon a story idea and then figuring out which genre it's in and writing that? Or do you find yourself discovering a voice and thinking maybe I'll stick with it?
I have a feeling it's going to be chasing the story
Mm,
and what genre matches it best
yeah.
because the character and the heart comes first for me, and then the dialogue, and then the rest.
Right.
Uh, so I know that's counter to what agents and publishing houses want. They want a built-in audience. But for me, I think there's a lot of readers that don't just stick in one genre. They stick a theme is a good solid path for them to take. And uh, so I'm willing to jump genres and stay focused on strong characters.
Right.
And I think that is more interesting.
Yeah. As we say, you have to stay interested in the story or it's not going to get written.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you'll be busy. So if people want to learn more about you and the book and look for new releases when they come out, that sort of thing, where can they go to find you and that information?
The book's website is moralcodethebook.com. My author website is loismelbourne.com. So that's a place to know what all the different things that I'm doing. I'm on Instagram, which is a hodgepodge of everything, which Instagram is, I guess. It's like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Lois Melbourne 131. I was one of those that started playing with Instagram and didn't know that I would really be doing much with it. So it's just, I don't know what the 131 is for, other than that's what Instagram gave me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm exploring other avenues as well. But those are the main places you can find.
Good. And if people want to purchase a copy of Moral Code, where can they go to buy it?
Well, it's available anywhere that you can buy books, but I encourage people to go to bookshop.org because I really believe in supporting independent bookstores, and that's what bookshop.org does. And so if you don't already have a favorite independent bookstore, you can either just buy straight from that website, or you can choose your independent bookstore that also gets some sales credit for that. But Moral Code's available there as well. And it's in ebook and Audible as well as in the physical copy.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Well, hopefully people will pick up a copy and give some thought to some of the questions you raise in it.
I hope so.
Good. Well, Lois, thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast. And I want to wish you luck with Moral Code and the work in progress, the historical fiction. We will look forward to that. So congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far. Best of luck with the rest of your writing journey.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The Bookshop at the End of the Internet is a podcast dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like any good bookshop, this podcast features a wide variety of books by the equally varied and interesting authors who felt compelled to write them. This podcast gives you a chance to meet these wonderful writers and discover your next must-read book. Listen to the authors describe their books and tell you their stories in their own words. My interviews feature books from all genres and authors from all walks of life, including those who are indie published as well as those published by small presses and large publishing houses. Looking for unique, not so easy to find books for yourself, a friend, or a book club? Tune into this podcast and find your newest favorite author or maybe a soon-to-be bestseller. This podcast, like all the best bookshops, is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. Tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book. You never know what treasures you might find in the Bookshop at the End of the Internet.